MOZA is finally coming to PlayStation, and this is huge for Gran Turismo 7. But the biggest story is what's going to happen next, because Gran Turismo 7 players are already asking the same questions everywhere. Will existing MOZA wheelbases suddenly work on PS5? Will we need a completely new PlayStation compatible base? Is this finally proper competition for Fanatec on PlayStation? And if you were about to buy a Thrustmaster Fanatec or even a Logitech wheel for Gran Turismo 7, should you now wait? Because Polyphony Digital has officially confirmed that MOZA is now an official Gran Turismo World Series peripheral partner, and MOZA is developing a steering wheel controller in collaboration with Gran Turismo that will be natively supported in GT7. And if MOZA can bring proper screen-based wheels into the Gran Turismo ecosystem, that could be massive, because that's the kind of hardware feature PlayStation sim racers have not really had at this level before. So today we're going to break down what's actually being confirmed, what the sim racing community is already arguing about, what probably happens to existing MOZA hardware, or whether you need to buy brand new MOZA hardware, and what it means for the competitors, and also why this could be one of the biggest PlayStation sim racing hardware moments in years, like a new big bang. So first, let's be very clear about what's actually happened here. Polyphony Digital has confirmed that MOZA is becoming an official peripheral partner of the Gran Turismo World Series, and now developing a Gran Turismo steering controller that will be natively supporting Gran Turismo 7. And it's really important to say that specifically, because this does not sound like a random third-party adapter or some unofficial workaround where you cross your fingers and hope the wheel behaves properly. This is MOZA working with Gran Turismo directly. Think about it. And that's why this is such a big deal, because MOZA has been one of the most aggressive sim racing hardware brands on PC, but PlayStation has always been that final door they could not properly get through until now. And this is why the community reaction has been so interesting, because people, to be honest, are not just saying cool, another wheel, they're immediately asking the bigger questions. Will my existing MOZA base work? Is this going to be a new PlayStation base that's being developed? Should I still buy Fanatec? Should I still buy Thrustmaster? And what happens if Gran Turismo brings more of its ecosystem to GT7? And this tells you how big this announcement actually is, because one partnership announcement has already made people question their next purchase from other brands, and that's how you know for sure that a hardware market has just changed. Now, I think the biggest question by far when I analyse it is whether existing MOZA hardware will work on PlayStation, and I completely understand why people are asking that, because if you've already invested in an R5, R9, R12 or even something higher up, the dream is obviously that MOZA and Gran Turismo release a software update and suddenly your existing hardware works natively on PS5. But I think we need to be careful here. We need to be realistic. Nothing confirmed so far says that existing MOZA wheelbases will suddenly become PlayStation compatible. The announcement says MOZA is developing a steering wheel controller with Gran Turismo, which to me sounds much more like new hardware than a simple firmware update, as much as I'd love that. So if you already own MOZA gear, my recommendation to you would be, don't assume that you're automatically going to get native GT7 support for your wheelbase. Now, it might happen in some form, and also your wheels might be compatible, but I think for right now, the safest assumption is to assume that MOZA is preparing at least a PlayStation compatible wheelbase. And this is where Sony compatibility gets complicated, because on PC, you can plug in loads of different hardware, configure it, map buttons, use software, and make things work. But on PlayStation, it's much more controlled. The community is already talking about the security chip issue, because historically PlayStation compatibility usually comes through officially licensed hardware, and that hardware normally needs the right authentication built into the system. That's why I don't think it's as simple as saying just release a firmware update. Maybe there is an adapter. Maybe there is some kind of new wheel solution. Maybe MOZA does something clever. But if you're buying MOZA today only because you think your current base will definitely work on PS5 later, I would slow down. And that's speaking as someone who has an affiliate with MOZA and PlayStation and Logitech and Thrustmaster. But if you're buying MOZA, use my link in the description. Same with Fanatec, 5% off. Same with Logitech, 5% off. Same with Thrustmaster, now 5% off. But all these brands are in a different place. In fact, let's talk about Fanatec, because for years, if you wanted a serious direct drive wheel for Gran Turismo, Fanatec was basically the most obvious name in the room. And the community reaction shows that a lot of people are happy for another serious competitor to to arrive. Now, I don't suddenly think this means that Fanatec are finished. Fanatec still has PlayStation compatible hardware, still has the GT DD Pro, still has the DD Extreme, and still has a very established ecosystem. They are also improving their customer service under Corsair's shoulders. For example, longer guarantees and warranties on new gear, and also refurbishment and spare parts as well. But the difference now is that Fanatec may no longer feel like the default serious option for Gran Turismo 7. And it's not only a Fanatec problem. Thrustmaster and Logitech should be paying attention as well, because PlayStation sim racing has been a fairly limited space for a long time. You kind of have Logitech at the beginner and the medium end, Thrustmaster with products like the T598, and Fanatec if you want to get more serious. But if MOZA enters PlayStation, they have an ecosystem that changes the pressure on everyone. They could come in with an R3 equivalent that kind of blows a G923 out the water. They could come out with their R5 Pro that would just destroy the T598, and they could come out with something like an R16 that would put serious pressure on the Gran Turismo DD Extreme. And when I say pressure, I mean a lot of it from a price perspective and not feeling like the gear is of inferior quality. That's really been MOZA's USP on PC, and I would say more competition is generally good for all of us. And this is where the story gets bigger than just one wheelbase, because the reason people are excited about MOZA is not only the direct drive wheelbases, it's the ecosystem. MOZA has wheels, pedals, shifters, handbrakes, active pedals, and even now motion products. So the community is already asking how much of that ecosystem could eventually work on PlayStation, because imagine Gran Turismo with proper MOZA wheel support, proper active pedal effects, and also maybe even proper motion. Now, we need to be careful. The announcement doesn't say active pedals are coming to GT7, but the reason people are talking about it is obvious. MOZA has technology that PlayStation players have not had access to in this way before, but the PlayStation is clearly powerful enough to use it. And then there's, I think, one of the most exciting topics of all, which is the screen wheel question. If MOZA can bring proper screen-based wheels into the Gran Turismo ecosystem, this could be massive. PlayStation sim racers have had good wheels before, but they've not really had the same kind of modern screen wheel ecosystem that you see more on PC. So if MOZA brings something like that to GT7, it could immediately make this game feel more premium, more modern, and more exciting than we've seen before, and this is why everyone is watching this so closely. Now, should Gran Turismo 7 players wait before buying a wheel? Honestly, if you're about to spend serious money on a PlayStation wheel right now, even like I said, as someone who has affiliate for MOZA, Logitech, Thrustmaster, Fanatec, I would say wait at least until the middle of August when we're going to see the next round of the Gran Turismo World Series, because if there's going to be an updated announcement, I suspect it would be around there. And if MOZA reveals a PlayStation compatible direct drive setup at a competitive price, then you're going to have much more information about what to choose to buy. If it comes in at $600, that's not going to affect you deciding to buy a G923. If it comes in at a R3 level, that might not affect you trying to buy a G Pro. But if it comes in at multiple levels or it affects what you were thinking about buying already, you might be feeling pretty smart if you just waited. So what does this all really mean? It means PlayStation sim racing might finally be getting more serious competition. It means Gran Turismo 7 players are going to get access to a brand that's been one of the biggest disruptors of sim racing on PC. It means Fanatec, Logitech and Thrustmaster have serious competitors, and it means that the PlayStation wheel market could become a lot more interesting very quickly. But the big unanswered question is still the same one the community is asking. Will this help existing MOZA owners, or will you need to buy a completely new PlayStation compatible MOZA product? Until MOZA themselves confirm the actual hardware price, release window and compatibility, we can't answer that properly. But one thing is clear, MOZA is finally coming to PlayStation, and for Gran Turismo 7 players this could be the start of a completely different hardware battle, and I can't wait for that.